Hello, I'm Jean Pete, and I welcome you back to our show, Better Living. Better Living is brought to you by the Homestead Hope Foundation and is sponsored by Homestead Hospice, where commitment to education and premier hospice care helps patients and families through life's most important journey. Thank you for joining me again this week. I'm Jeannie Pete, and today I bring you senior real estate specialist, Chad Schernikau. How'd I do?
That's good. Much better. Thank you.
So, Chad, this is going to be a great show. Better Living is a show geared towards seniors and their loved ones to educate and inform them about all aspects of senior living. And I don't even really like that word senior because really, I think it's baby boomer generation on the information that we share every week that is important to everyone listening to us. But I love the fact that you're not just in real estate, that you really have a background and a passion for the older population. So can we talk a little bit about you and what your background is and what your schooling is and how you were driven to really target and enter into the senior market?
Sure, that would be great. Well, basically it started back, I'm from Nebraska originally. So I worked on the farms, small towns, and then I went to University of Nebraska. I became a teacher. But in that time, I had taken a couple of classes that were in gerontology. And then from that point on, I worked for the Parks and Rec during college. And, we had senior programs. It was great because I loved doing that job because I loved it because basically you could have so much fun with them. Plus it was the stories. I mean, they always have great stories, because they saw much more of a change than we do nowadays. Ours is more technological. They saw lots of different things going on.
We were just talking, I'm going to tell now what we were talking about before we got on the show. We were just talking about cell phones and what we would do. What do we do without a cell phone? What was life like before that? And I remember, and we were talking about how, back in the day when we were in school or whatever, and our parents were going to pick us up after an event, there were no cell phones. You just sat there and you just waited for your parents to pick you up and hope they didn't forget. And if they were 10 minutes late, you started to get really stressed because you couldn't just pick up the phone and have that peace of mind. However, it was a much more, I think, patient generation because we didn't have a beck and call technology, so everybody's now expectations are so much higher for quick and responding and all of that. So anyway, getting back to what you just said, I too have worked in healthcare for a long time, and I have worked with the older generation. And when I say seniors, anybody who is wiser than me. And I love listening to the stories, and what you just said touches my soul as well, because there's so much to learn from the wisdom of folks that were around without all of this technology when true socialization and people skills were in line. And every day I feel gifted working with seniors because I get the gift of their wisdom and their prioritization to refocus my life where it needs to go. So anyway, I just wanted to digress with there.
I agree with that a little bit, just because I agree with that actually a lot, because a lot of them don't tend to use technology. If they use it, it's on a limited basis, and they don't want to use it. They want to just go along with the way they've always had. And that's a very calming, peaceful, takes them the stress out of life. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I try to achieve, but it's hard at times. Okay,
so you grew up in Nebraska,
yes.
You went to school, you were a teacher. And then you worked for Parks and Recreations, and you did a lot of activities with older adults and senior population.
Yes, and basically what happened was once I graduated from college, I went to Las Vegas and taught out there, and then I came to Atlanta. And in Atlanta, I realized that I wasn't going to teach forever. So I saw they had a program at West Georgia, and it was a master's in gerontology. So I went and got my master's. But I didn't find anything I really wanted to do. Nothing really fit for what I wanted to do. So I stayed as a teacher, and then I got into real estate. And then once I got into real estate, I realized that I could really help the aging or the I guess baby boomer population in this area, and I could actually do a lot more than just help them with housing as well. So what a lot of times what I do is I sit down with clients and we deal with the families, we deal with their housing. Do they need to look at moving to different housing? Do they need to downsize? Do they need to do we need to modify the house? I mean, all these things. And
so when you're called, you maybe are called to come out and check out their home and help give them options on maybe what is the price and how much could I get for it. And then when you're there, because of your background, I'm making an assumption, you can clarify for me. When you get there, because of your background, the answer may be very different from what they think they're going to get. You may say, you know what, you're in the right place. I think a modification is better for you. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
because it's the way I run my business is not always about buying and selling. It's about making sure whatever they need, it fits them. So yeah, I'll go into a house and I'll look at it and talk to them about it and say, listen, you can sell it for this, but have you thought about modifying your house? Or have you thought about, or there's times where I have a client right now that she's looking at downsizing, and she wanted to look at maybe a townhome, and I talked to her about it. I said, well, you're 66. You're not old by any means. You can get around great.
Have a lot of life left living.
Yeah, a lot of life. And so, but I said, you got to think about 5 years from now what's going to happen. I mean, it's not, and this was hard for her to talk about because it was, I said, you're not 21, you're not 40, you're 66. So what happens if something happens in 4 or 5 years? Are you going to be able to go up and down those stairs? Is this going to fit what you need? I said, so maybe should we look at something that's more of a ranch style house? Something with that.
Oh, right, because she was thinking
Yes.
townhome.
Yeah, 2 stories.
Just, I don't have to take care of the yard, but that's up and down. I see, okay.
So it all depends on the situation. There's lots of different ways to go. But the hardest part is because you're dealing with a whole family. A lot of times you're not just dealing with
one person.
one person. You're dealing with a whole family. And not everybody's going to agree and not everybody's going to be happy because, the kids are just dealing with the fact their parents are getting older.
Everybody has different priorities.
Yeah. Parents are having a hard time because nobody wants to change. Change is hard for everybody. So changing from their house they've been in for 30 years, that's hard.
So how do you, that's a really good point. How do you, because I've had to handle that as well in hospice and delivering information that a loved one is ready for hospice. And it's not usually just one person you're talking to. It's a whole family of children who are trying to take care of mom and dad and come up with what's best. And trying to get folks who are at very different spheres in a situation to come together is a unique gift, honestly. And so I could see where your background in gerontology could be very special offering for someone who's thinking about selling their home. So how do you do that to pull these families together?
That's a hard question, but basically it's sitting down and just showing them their options, showing them, listen, this is where your mom or dad or parents are in the stage of their life. This is what we're looking at. And then just kind of have them project in the future, like their future self, their parents. Where do you see them in 5 years?
Just opening up the mind
and say,
to
listen,
look at a broader
exactly.
spectrum of for instances.
Yes, exactly. It's like
in a non-judgmental way.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I keep cutting you off.
No, you're fine. No, that's quite all right. No, you're absolutely right. That's exactly what it is, because you want them to see that, hey, listen, this is where they are now. What's going to happen in 5 years, 10 years? I mean, so let's look at the planning right now. Can they stay in this house? They can right now, maybe. So maybe to modify the house. So let's figure out how we can modify it. If they need to sell, maybe move into something a little smaller. Well, then let's talk about that. But those are hard decisions for anybody to make at that stage. So it's kind of like kid gloves. You got to be real careful.
So tell me, okay, before I ask this question,
Yeah.
You are a senior real estate specialist, and you work for Total Atlanta Realty.
That's actually my company. I'm affiliated with Keller Williams
Okay.
Realty. So, but I have my own company. It's Total Atlanta Realty. Yes.
Okay, so how does that work with Keller Williams?
Well, basically, I'm under Keller Williams, and I just have, it's a brand, basically.
Okay.
So then when they go to my website, or they have my email, or it's all Total Atlanta Realty, so it makes it easier for them to, because they try and just put in Keller Williams, it's come up with just...
They're going to have a hard time finding you.
Yeah, hard time finding me.
Okay, so you're at 3350 Atlanta Road in Smyrna.
Yes, ma'am.
But you cover all over Atlanta, given the
Yes.
name of your company. Okay, and I just want to give your contact info, and we can give it again later. Sure. It's 678-570-8123. And you can also email Chad at chad@totalatlantarealty.com. And your website as well is www.totalatlantarealty.com. Yes. But I do have a question.
Yes.
So the folks that call you, given the name Total Atlanta Realty too, do they necessarily know that you are a senior real estate specialist? And so it just sort of kind of happens as circumstance when you get there? Or are they reaching out to you specifically because they just really aren't sure what to do and they need your background to help them?
Well, this is a new branch of my business. So I have not had a chance to design parts of my website to have this on there, and that's what's going to have. I'm working on that right now.
I see.
But yeah, so basically what I'm doing is I'm actually going out and talking to vendors and talking to and developing relationships with different vendors and different people and trying to look at building that part of the business so I can go out and work with them.
Okay. So if you have someone who's in a home 20, maybe even 10, but you get a lot of folks in a home 20, 30, 40, maybe more years, and they're getting older and it's just too much, and now they want to sell. They're going to call you because you're not just going to give them, this is how much your house is worth. You're going to help them make the decision on where they're going to go first. So you're looking for the folks that haven't decided on the next place yet.
Yes, or that and also, well, there's two I'm looking for. One is that. So I'll go in their house and say, let's talk about, before we talk about your house, let's talk about what you want to do. I mean, if you want to sell your house, great. But if you need a downside, let's talk about where you're thinking about. Are you thinking about going into a house or into an assisted living? What do we need to? Let's look at that piece before we get to the selling piece, because if we need to figure that out, because that's an important step before you get to the selling part, because you don't want to sell a house if they're not ready.
And let me ask you this too, because then in my mind I'm thinking about maybe you're getting a call from a daughter or a son who maybe wants mom and dad or aunt or uncle or whoever to move in with them because they're concerned about their safety too.
Yes.
So then you come out to evaluate their home to see what they can get for their house, so that daughter or son can figure out how much they can put into their home to modify it so that it's okay for mom or dad to move in.
Yes.
And you may find it's better for mom or dad to stay for a little while, or what? Like how I'm trying to get the folks out there to understand how you're different and what the benefit is in calling you.
Well, the benefit in calling me is basically, if it's a daughter or son calling me, if it's an actual client who's a homeowner is calling me, we're going to sit down and look at the overall plan. If the daughter called me and said, hey, we want to look at moving our mother in here, well, then let's talk to the mom, and let's talk to your mom and see what she really wants to do. Let's look at her house, because she might be able to stay a little bit longer if we modify it.
And let's look at yours.
Yes.
Because your house might be worse for her to stay in, I guess, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we look at her house first, and we look at the daughter's house. Say, okay, if you really want to make this work, we got to look at does she want to go? Does she want to move into your house? Does she need to right now? If she does, okay, let's talk about how we can make your house work. And if it, and then you talk about modifications of the house. You talk about things to the house that they can do. But if it doesn't work, then you have to look at an alternate solution.
Yeah, and I'm all about helping people make their best decisions so they can live their best life for the rest of their lives. And I want to tell a little bit of a story here for a moment, if you bear with me. I have wonderful neighbors, and Sam and Dana, and they had, I believe it was Sam's mom, in a senior facility, high-rise apartment or whatever. And they wanted her to come and live with them. So they did the basement of their home over, and it was beautiful. Looked out onto a little koi pond because they love to be out in the yard, and just a really beautiful place for mom to be. But in order for mom to get there, she either had to come in the house and go down the stairs to get to the basement, or they put a little walkway to the left of the driveway, down the hill into the back door downstairs, which didn't quite work that well, because as mom deteriorates and maybe needs a wheelchair, that's dangerous outside trying to come around the home. We don't have elevators in our houses typically. And so what they found was this isn't as good as we thought. Did a whole basement over, spent a lot of money to get her there. They ended up selling the house and moving, and then she ended up moving somewhere else. So I completely see the benefit of having an outsider come in that has experience, that's gone through these stories with others, that can give solid information and have you think bigger picture about down the line as well, so that doesn't happen to you.
No, that's a great story. No, that's exactly right. Because even the walkway, I mean, was it covered? I mean, did they? So weather conditions. I mean, she's walking slow, and you've got a lot of rain. She could slip, or lots of different things can happen. So no, I agree. I mean, you got to look at all solutions before you make one. And in order, it's like, I think I wrote the analogy when I was sending stuff to you. I said it's like buying a car. If you go in when you need one, you can't evaluate everything. So then you just buy whatever's there on the lot at the time. But if you go in when you don't need one and you have time to look at all your options, you're going to make the best decision. Same thing with this. You have to do it earlier than if you know that your parents or whatever start aging. Look at it earlier. That's why I'm trying to start educating people on pre-planning. Look at some of those baby boomers that aren't ready to retire, or getting close to retiring, or are physically fine. They're like, well, why should we think about our house? Well, let's look at your house now. 10 years down the road, are you still want to be in here? Is it too big for you? So, so they can maybe look at possible things they could do down the road.
Okay.
And
so
there's lots of different ways.
I don't mean to stop you. I have a lot of questions in my head that I want to get out to the audiences. And one of them is, let's first talk about the real estate market right now, because especially with what's going on in our markets and Bernanke and decisions recently, and we're going to slow down the stimulus and interest rates are going to go up on your homes, and how's that going to affect buyers? And so what is your advice right now for someone thinking, maybe this is something I need to do in the next year or two, but I'm not so sure I'm ready?
If you're thinking about it, look at it right now. It's a ridiculous market. People are buying houses and they're just flying off the market just because there's not a lot of inventory. I had one I listed 2 days ago. I had 6 showings on it and had offer last night. It was on day 1 market. It's under contract.
But, prices really haven't come back. A lot of folks are still not where they were when they bought the home.
No, they were. Well, that's the thing, is that they've started to come up. It's like when we had the drought like 4 or 5 years ago. It takes 6 months to drain every lake in here. It takes 3 years to build it back up, the water. So same thing with the housing market. You can lose value in a matter of days, months. But yet to build it back up, it takes a long time. So they've come up. I wouldn't say a lot, but they've come up enough to where people are actually being able to break even, or maybe make a little bit.
I guess my question is: are we at the point now where the likelihood of being able to sell your house is greater, so get it on the market, even though you might sell it for less? Or maybe should we be a little more patient? 4 or 6 months down the road, we can maybe still sell, but get a little bit more for it. Or not a good idea, because 6 months down the road, interest rates are going to go way up and the buyers are going to dry out. I don't really know where we're at.
Well, they just came out with something recently on the interest rates going up. It's not going to affect the market as much, because people, it's like anything, you have to adjust to what's going on. So I have clients that are adjusting to it, realizing, okay, they might not get as much as they used to, but they can still get something at it, and they're still historically low at 4.5%. But the thing is most people that are looking at downsizing more than likely have been in their house for a long time, so they have a lot of equity in their house.
It's perfect for them.
Yeah, so it's perfect for them, because then they can put their house on the market, sell it, and then take that money and use it towards whatever it is, if it's independent living,
and get a lower priced home now.
Well, you can get a lower priced home.
It's still
can use
a
it for
fair, so get it on the market now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I mean that would be, because all my clients that I've been dealing with for the last 3 years, they've been holding off, and they're putting on their house on the market now, and they're selling. And if you really think about making a transition, whether you're 50 years old and your kids just moved out and went to college, you need to downsize. This is a good time to do it. You can't beat that.
Okay. So that's quite a task, though, when you're in a house for 40 years. Mm-hmm. How do you help folks get ready for that? Well, there's a lot of stuff in a home after 40 years.
Yes, there is. And that's something we have to talk about, because there are services out there, and I'm looking at the different ones where they come in. They'll help with that. They'll help with organizing. They'll help with moving. They'll help with just downsizing in general. And there's lots of ways to downsize. I mean, because if you're looking at, I have a blog, and I'm doing a 6-part on downsizing. So I'm on, and basically when you're talking downsizing, you just have to look at where you're going to move to, and really evaluate, is this the furniture I need for this house? Do I need a riding lawnmower if I'm moving into a condo? Do I need a 12 dining room table that seats 12 when, or is there furniture you can put in a different room and still keep some of those antiques that you really love? So, I mean, it's just sitting down and talking about the overall picture and saying, listen, we can get some services for you to help you make some decisions, and let's make some decisions together. It's a slow process. It's very, very slow. It's not going to be somebody calling up and says, I'm ready to sell my house, and you go and list it and sell it. It takes time, and it's very.
And we've had folks on the show before that help seniors move, and they'll take people who are not seniors on their list off if they get a call from a senior. They are so dedicated to the senior population. They reprioritize to help people move, and they'll come in and take the emotion out of it as much as they can and do as much for you as possible. And it's those kind of services and those kind of connections that Chad has, that this is a very, very difficult thing after you're in a home for 40 years. I know my mother, she moved down from Boston last October. And again, she was in the house for 40 years. And it's exciting because she was getting married and moving at 70 to Georgia. So she was looking forward to her future. But the complete overwhelmingness of packing up a home you've been in for 40 years almost froze her into inaction. And so there's so much at stake. I'm such a proponent of seeking out folks that have a passion for the more mature population, the seniors, the over 50 population, and 50 is young, maybe even over 60. But the fact that you have a gerontology background and the fact that Sherry had such a passion for bumping other people for the seniors to get their needs taken care of, this is why I have folks like you on the show, because there is a difference. And it's not just a physical component of moving from one location to another. There's a huge emotional, psychological, and sometimes spiritual component to the next phase of your life. And you need somebody who is passionate and who really, truly dedicates their life to this population to help them through those times so that they can live their best life. So I love that you have a network of folks that will help you with their transition and their moving and helping them make those decisions. And we're going to have to take a quick break, but when we come back, I want to talk about the types of choices that folks make. I loved your story about the townhouse, but we also need to talk about, these ranch condos that are great for seniors, or assisted living facilities, or senior high-rises. So we still have a whole lot to talk about, folks. Stay with us, and we'll be right back. Hello, I'm Jean Pete, and I welcome you back to our show, Better Living. Better Living is brought to you by the Homestead Hope Foundation and is sponsored by Homestead Hospice, where commitment to education and premier hospice care helps patients and families through life's most important journey. Thank you for staying with us today. Just to recap the first half hour, we are here today with Chad Schernikau, who is a senior real estate specialist with Total Atlanta Realty. Chad is based here out of Smyrna, Georgia, but he helps folks all over the greater Atlanta area. And today, in the first half hour, we were talking about the importance of Chad's background and focus and passion for seniors in the real estate market. He has a degree in gerontology, so that helps him not just come out to you when you're looking to sell your home or buy a new home or whatever it is your situation is. He's not just going to look at the real estate component. He's not built that way because of his background and his education and his passion. He's going to look at the whole picture and help you make the best decisions for you going forward for the rest of your life. So again, this is Better Living, and that's why I am so blessed to be here every week with you. We are all about informing and educating you about all aspects of living so that you can live your best life for the rest of your life. So Chad, thanks for coming again today.
Oh, thank you for having me. This is great.
Was that just about the right recap?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
So before the break, we talked a lot about how you help and how you add different services and how you might even change people's minds on what they think is the best next move to what is truly the best next move by broadening their thoughts on thinking about questions maybe they weren't thinking about, such as, do I really want to move into that townhome, even though it's beautiful and there's a golf course attached because I'm only in my 60s and I can play golf? Once I get there in 10 years, am I going to be able to go up and down the stairs? Mm-hmm. And sometimes you just don't think about that stuff. So great offering.
And that's what my client said. She goes, I just didn't think about that. Because they look at where they are right now instead of looking at in the future.
And when you're hiring someone to do that kind of thinking for you, because that's their expertise, that's their experience, and they should be offering you the bigger picture and filling in the voids of what you're not thinking about, because that's not your expertise. So thank you for focusing on this market, and thank you for taking your gerontology background and putting it to good use for our seniors. I'm so passionate about this population, because they paved the way for us, and it's time for us to pay them back.
Fantastic. Thank you.
So we talked about why a townhome might not be a good option, even though you're downsizing, and if you're in a townhome, you don't have to take care of a big old yard, so that might seem attractive. But I want to talk about these. I love them down here in Atlanta. I'm from Boston. We really didn't have a lot of these up there as options, but these ranch condo complexes, I think it's over 50 or over 55 usually. So 55 and older, you can move in, and they're usually in clusters of 4. You know what I'm talking about? Is that what they call just ranch condos?
Yeah, because I've got one listed right now. It's not actually in the 55 and older, or even 62 and older. It's just basically a ranch condo, and it's great because it's a turnkey. If you can walk in there, everything, all the homeowner association takes care of everything. So you just walk in, you can leave. If you're going on vacation, you lock your door and you leave. There's nothing to be done.
And you don't have to be 55 to move in there?
It depends. There are some that like this neighborhood wasn't. So I mean, anybody can move in there. But generally they're 1,500 square feet. They're usually a little bit smaller than a standard house. Well, I can say not smaller, but they're not big houses. So for a family, that'd be a little bit tough because there's not a lot of space. But for one person or two or a couple, it's great because one level. They can walk. They don't have to worry about steps. Even when they go out to their porch or deck, they don't have to worry about it at all. And it's just a really easy way to turnkey, lock and leave kind of community.
And I love the over 55 communities because you have 3 neighbors sort of attached, but it's really private. You don't feel like your neighbors are attached to you like apartment living or townhome living. You really feel like you're in a home, but you're close, and there's a safety and security to that as well.
Oh, definitely a safety and security. Oh, tremendous amount of safety and security because that's one of the top reasons. I mean,
they're really
transition.
Close. They're going to know if something's wrong with you too.
Mm-hmm. And everybody keeps, and they know each other. So they can keep track of what's going on.
And I have another story. I love stories because I think stories help people really understand and help them move to action. But I mentioned my mother earlier. She moved down here from Boston into a ranch condo subdivision in Kennesaw. And it's beautiful. But her neighbors, he has Alzheimer's, but it's early stages. And I've worked in hospice and in healthcare for a long time. And this is the hardest time for a caregiver because they're still healthy and they're still walking and talking. And so they don't qualify for additional services, and everything falls on the caregiver. And so they moved from a home into this ranch condo community in the back where my mom is, and he'll walk the community. And with Alzheimer's, you fear that people might wander and get lost or forget. And he says, well, I always know where I live because I look for the red umbrella. And so all of them in this community, and I think it's more specific to 55 and older because most times folks here aren't working and they were looking out for each other and they're looking out the windows and checking up on you, which is a good thing.
Oh, it's a
and
great
so
thing.
The entire community watches out for this man, and it allows them a semblance of normalcy and independence, yet he's still semi-safe and he knows how to find his way back. So it's just a beautiful story to me that they can take that much longer to stay together in a home, and he knows where to come back to, and everybody's looking out for him.
And that is a great story because when you have the idea is when you retire, no matter where you are in the stage, you can still have a great quality of life for a very long time. You just have to find the right place, you have to find the right situation, you have to find the right services. And I like some of these new, like I said, that town communities offer. They have pools and gyms and classes and
Real
instructors,
social.
social events, and they have activity planners, all these things, so that because the more sedentary you become, the shorter your lifespan is. I mean, the more active you are, you're going to live longer because you're happier.
So here's my question for this couple, and I don't know their names. this is a great place for them to live right now. But, like you were talking about earlier, it's not going to be for the long haul, because eventually, or maybe it will, and I hope it is, but it could be that he may need to go somewhere for safety reasons to like an assisted living facility or what have you. And now she'll be there on her own, which is very wonderful because they're so close. They're 4 clustered together and they all know each other and are taking care of each other, so she won't be alone. But on the flip side, would you recommend a move from a home into a place like this in an instance like that? Or would you more recommend, well, let's look at some other option? And then part 2 of this question is, how are these ranch condos for resale? Because I'm thinking that would be my choice. If I knew 5-10 years down the road, these are a hot item and they're going to have good resale value.
The resale part's a good question because, like I said, there's more and more being built. So I guess in that aspect, that's hard to say right now because there's newer homes and they're not necessarily. I know the one I have, obviously the market dropped, so that one won't make as much. Obviously, they actually lose money. But if they, if they're newer and I don't see an issue with the resale part of it. I think it all depends. I haven't really done numbers on that yet.
But you think this is a good option?
I think it's a great option.
To downsize.
Oh yeah, I think a ranch condo is a great option for anybody that's doing a transition and moving on to another stage of your life, because it's still a house. It's a condo, but it's still a house. It's not like your typical condos that we see here are townhomes. It's a house. You could have a garage, a yard, all this stuff, but it's to where you have extra services. You have things in place to keep you safe, but also keep your quality of life up. And that's the biggest thing. 'Cause quality of life, the quality of life is the most important thing.
Yeah.
And if they can extend their quality of life in a house or independently, I think it's fantastic. Here's
where I see growth in this market too, if these realtors get creative, because these realtors, that would be you, or builders. I think we're getting more back to the extended family unit. And I think part of that is the last 5 years of the economy. And I think, you have older parents aging with the baby boomer generation that we've all been hearing about for 10 or 15 years now. You have the sandwich generation, which is us.
Yes.
Raising your kids and now trying to make sure your parents are well taken care of. And I'm seeing more and more, even in my own subdivision, parents moving in with their adult children who are taking care of their teenage children. And there's much more extended families just in my subdivision alone. I would love to see more of these ranch condo type complexes built, where how great would this be? We would live in a unit which is connected by a hallway, 2 doors or whatever, to another unit, so that our parents can live independently. We're not taking their independence away, but they're right next door. We are right there.
So you still have the independence of them, but also you have your family life still structured.
And I heard about this in Arizona in about, I watched and read, I'm a little dorky, but they're starting to do this, I want to say out in the Phoenix area or the Tucson area, and they showed it, and it was marvelous. Everybody had their own home, but you're literally 1 hallway away. So if something were to happen, or if you had one of those lifeline buttons or whatever, it would go directly to you. You'd be there in 1 minute. Yet you still have autonomy to live with your own husband or your own wife and raise your own children without somebody being on top of you and telling you all the things you're doing wrong.
No, I think it's a great concept. I do. I think it's a great concept.
Have you heard anything about that?
Briefly, but
because I think as the baby boomers age, there's going to be more and more and more people that would buy into that concept. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic.
I think it's a great concept. I was talking to somebody yesterday about I would really like to get into the development stage of these subdivisions for aging. I think it'd be fantastic because then you can customize them the way you want to. You can bring in you can really get feedback on what kind of services you need, and having an option like that would be fantastic for people, because if a family already knows that they're going to be taking their parents in, well then let's find the best option for them to where, hey, you, like I said, you still have your life and then your parents have their life, but you're always close enough.
And I work with seniors a lot, and they say, I love my daughter, but I don't want to live with her. She coddles me. She babies me. I'm still living. I'm still out there. I want to be more independent. I don't want to lose my sense of independence. And so I'd like to see, just my own little plug, I'd like to see more of those things being created.
I agree. I think that's something I'm going to start. I'm going to do some research on. That's a great idea.
Okay, so back to the seniors and senior real estate.
Yes.
What do you see the trends are in this market? What do you see folks are doing now? And how can we get more information out to our audiences so that they are more informed if they're looking to downsize?
Oh, you're talking trends in downsizing? Mm-hmm. Oh, I mean, that's I'm seeing a lot with especially with people that have their kids that just left, or like my neighbor across the street. Their kids actually left in February and March this year, and like, this is too big of a house. We need something smaller, and put on the market and sold it.
I'm thinking of that commercial where they're crying in the driveway as she's driving away, and then they leave and they're
Yes.
doing the happy dance in the house.
And they're changing the rooms around.
that
Yes.
might be me.
Yeah, I have young kids, so I can't imagine them leaving, and I'm just like, but I know at some point that I raise them to go and be independent, and and I'll probably be ready for them to go and kind of go on their own way. But downsizing, for a while there, the size of house was actually, statistics showing it was shrinking a little bit. People were buying smaller houses. Now they're kind of going up a little bit again. But
are they?
Yeah, I think I think in general, most people, especially when you're getting older, are wanting to downsize. They don't want to have the maintenance. They don't want to have the costs of utilities and just overall upkeep of a house. They don't want to have to mow the yard every day. I know.
I'm there. And I'm in my 40s. I'm over it. I just want to get rid of all the stuff. There's too much stuff.
Well, everything in life, there's too much in life right now, so you're constantly on the go, so it makes it hard. So, I see a definitely trend in people wanting to downsize and want something a little bit less maintenance and be able to go out and enjoy their life and not spend it having to work on the house.
So what do you see people's choices? How do you help them choose the right next step?
Basically, we sit down and we talk about what they want. First of all, I want their basic wish list. What do you want? Where do you want to see? Do you want to, and then from that point on, whatever their wish list, we start looking at. Okay, let's look at realistic situation here. Okay, you want, like the lady with a 2-story town. You want the 2-story house. I think it's beautiful. It's great, but let's talk about what you think what your next 5 or 10 years are going to look like. And once we do that, then we can start talking about options and say, okay, let's look at some options. And some people might say, hey, listen, I want to live in a townhome, and then in 5 years, 10 years over, when I start kind of can't handle the steps, then I'll sell it and go somewhere else. Okay, if that's what your plan is, that's fine, as long as you have that plan in place. As long as you've thought it through, we've talked about it, and that's what you want to do, okay. But some people they don't have an idea of what the next step is. They don't know what services are out there.
They just know they want out. They want to get out from underneath this house that's bogging them down.
Yes, and that's where we'd sit down and talk about, okay, how can we do it?
And then I know we're not going to have a lot of time to talk about this, but because of your background, you also understand finances and retirement planning and wills and living wills, and so you bring all that in when you go out as well.
Yes, yeah, because the idea is I want to make sure everything is in place. So if they don't have a service, I will talk to them about basic information. If they don't have that in place, then I'll get someone to help them with that. Because I think when you get to a certain point, I've known many people that don't have their wills done, or they've not updated them, they've not looked at it, or not looked at their finances. A lot of people don't have the time to, or think about looking at it every year to make sure everything's up to date. Especially with finances and wills, those are the two biggest things. But to be able to just look at everything and say, okay, you have everything in place, you have a plan in place, so that when things change, you're ready to go. So that you know what you're going to do.
I love that, because also, there may be decisions to make. You're going to sell the house, you're going to downsize, you're going to have a chunk of change over here. But you may not be in this house after 5 years based on what you're telling me. So then you can also offer them, here's what's best to do with this chunk of change based on your 5-year, 10-year goal.
Yes, and also, another thing is, they don't know how much services cost. They don't know how much it costs to move into an assisted living or into a different areas. They just don't know, and they need to be educated on that so they can start planning for that, have that money. So when they do have to make a transition, they're going to have the finance in place and not have to scramble around to figure out how they're going to make it work.
So you may even say something like, also when you sell this house and you buy this house, you're going to have this much left over. But let's also talk about, have you ever thought of a long-term care insurance policy or something like that?
Or just a long-term plan of, okay, that's why I've started to look at possibly doing more educating of the the early baby boomers on pre-planning for that. I mean, yeah, they plan for retirement, but do you really plan on? Have you thought about the services, what they cost, what you have things in place so that you're not, the finances are going to be there. So yeah, there's a lot of things that have to go into this before they actually make a move.
You know, this is what bugs me about most things, not just senior living, not just selling your house, is everything is so fragmented that it's hard to put a big picture plan in place for successful living. You know, let's talk about me. All right, let's talk about me. But anyway, I will come back. This is a good point. You know, when you're in your mid-40s and you're raising children, you're trying to advance a career and make more money, so that, because college expenses are right on the horizon,
yes.
right? But then you're told you need to save for retirement. But then you're told, well, you got to put college expenses away. And then you meet somebody else and they say, no, don't save for college, because the more money you have, the less money you'll be given, and you'll end up paying more out of pocket. And then it's, well, think about your parents, buy a policy for them. And it's just so frustrating, because I wish somebody would just come up with a big picture plan to say, here's this percent, here's this percent, here's this percent, here's this percent, not based on what you in real estate, not you specifically, say you can afford. But if here's your, I just don't think there's enough of that kind of teaching out there. So this is what I love about the fact that you're here today. And this is why that story about me is applicable to all of you listening today. Chad's going to go out. You think you want to sell your home. Now, he's going to come and visit you. You're not really sure what your next step is. You really, at this point, just want to know how much you can get for your house. So you take his real estate expertise, and he tells you what he thinks you can get for the house and what you think you need to do to get it ready to sell. But not only that, Chad's big picture, he's going to come out and he's going to say to you, well, have you thought about this? Or what are your goals and wishes for the next 5 or 10 years? And if this is what you think you can get for this house, and this is what your goal is for the next 5 or 10 years, here's financially where you're going to be when you sell the house and move into a smaller home. And now let's talk about what's best. Do you have a financial planner? Do you have a retirement plan? Let's talk about where you need to do that, where you need to put that money, or he'll connect you to other experts for you. Have I got that right, Chad?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And that in and of itself is a beautiful service to offer our seniors, because I can tell you right now, I am not saving for college and retirement and building a nest egg and paying all my bills. And I really don't know too many people in the last 5 years that are.
Yeah, no.
So we need help. The general population just needs help to direct us so that we can be successful in managing a budget and saving for retirement and having enough so that we don't outlive our money. And I love that you offer all of those services under an umbrella and then send them to the experts when it's over you.
Yeah, my brother's a financial planner, so he does all my planning. And there's many times I talk to him, he says how that instead of putting $25 a month away, somebody's going to go out and buy something. So they don't really think, they don't look at the value of saving over long term and preparing. Because I know I'm going to get old. I know I'm going to have retirement. I'm not going to, work for the rest of my life. So, I'd rather feel better and sleep better at night if I know if I'm planning ahead and putting things away. And my kids, I worry about my kids in college. So yeah, that's a plan I've got to put in place as well. So I agree. I think when you have a plan in place, then you have a better idea of where you're going instead of just waiting till the last minute and make a decision.
Okay, so folks, if you're at a place right now where you're hearing in the news that they're going to slow the stimulus and people are getting a little scared, gold is dropping through the floor, and we're not thinking that we're going to get too much back on our investments because the markets are going crazy. And you're thinking, I want to get out of my house before the interest rates go way up and the buyers start to dry up. And I don't know whether that will happen or not, but if it's putting the thought in your head that, hey, I want to find out what my house is worth to see what my options are for the future, and you're in that senior market where you could use the benefit of having a real estate broker who is dedicated and educated and specializes in the senior population, you can give Chad a call. And again, it's Chad Schernikau, Did I do that right?
That's perfect.
And that's Schernikau. And he is a senior real estate specialist with Total Atlanta Realty. He's at 3350 Atlanta Road in Smyrna, Georgia, 30080. But you can contact him at 678-570-8123. Or you can email him at chad@totalatlanta.realty.com. So, Chad, we only have a few more minutes before we have to end the show. So in the last 2 minutes, what are the top 3 things you want to leave people with?
Good. Top 3 things. I would say one of the top things would be that if you really think that you or you have a loved one that's getting ready to transition, or you want to see what options you have out there, look at it. Look at it earlier than later. That's the biggest thing.
You don't have to make a decision now. Just get the information.
Yeah. No decision has to be made. I have a lot of clients that I deal with for years and years and years to make sure they're taken care of, and then when they're ready to go, it makes it a lot easier. Another thing is that just educate yourself. I mean, when I got my master's 10 years ago, there was not nearly the services there are today. It's amazing how many more services there are out there, and you can just go on the computer and type in, go into Google, or just go to the Georgia Division of Aging. You can go down there and just get. I mean, there's so many places you can go to get magazines or whatever. And then basically, make sure you talk to your loved ones. Make sure don't just assume this is what they want to do, or if they want to transition. Make sure that you're on the same page with everybody, because that's the hardest part. Because the last thing you want to do is have bad memories of making transition.
And I think that is important. I think I want to leave folks with the idea too that I'm a daughter, and I would in a heartbeat say, come move in and live with me. I want to take care of you. You've taken care of me for your whole life. But it's very, very important to get an outsider to come in, to have an objective opinion about what is best, and to hear and interview the person moving in and the person taking them in, so that you can make the best decision and help them make the best decision for them for the rest of their lives.
I agree.
So thank you so much for being here today. Again, you can reach out to Chad at 678-570-8123. I'm Jeannie Pete. Thanks for listening. Have a blessed day and week ahead, and listen here same time next week and every week. Homestead Hope Foundation is your resource for a healthy life. God bless.